Hello, welcome to Mortality and Tea. I'm your host, Amy. This is a show where we talk about mortality and our own death in the hopes that we can find a more rich and juicy life. Today, I'm honored to have my friend Nate Johnson on the show. Nate Johnson was born and raised in Germantown, Ohio. He is one of a small family. His father, his mother, his brother, who is 3 years his junior. Germantown is a small town, so he had a small town upbringing. He was a Boy Scout and earned his Eagle. He also played football and did theater. After high school, he joined the Navy and was trained as a nuclear reactor operator. He volunteered for submarines, and that was probably the best decision he made while he was in. After 6 years, though, he had had enough of ridiculous operations schedules and very little downtime, so he got out. He moved back to Germantown to help his father take care of his mother, who had multiple sclerosis. And then he moved to Columbus, Ohio, and shared an apartment with a very good friend who was also recently out of the Navy. While he was in Columbus, he turned his lifelong passion for computer repair into a vocation. After about a year in Columbus, he moved to Pennsylvania and was there for 13 years. He says, 13 years is a decent chunk of time, and a lot happened in Altoona. It's quite a list, but nothing that other people haven't done. New jobs, weddings, births, graduations, funerals, ceremonies, championships and commiserations, friends and enemies. All good stories have an end, though, and a divorce was the end of that chapter for me. I moved back to Miami Valley when I had fulfilled all of my obligations in Pennsylvania and, at my employer's insistence, continued my job in Altoona via remote management and quarterly visit. These days, Nate has been remarried, and he says he's honestly happier than he's ever been. He has no regrets and complaints and loves his friends and the life that he and Kate, his wife, have built together. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. This was a conversation where we discussed Nate's own death experience, where he values peace. He values sharing how much he loves with everyone in the moment. A quote that I pulled from this conversation, which I really love, and this is a quote from Nate, said, "What this is a question he asks himself. What do I want the world to look like when I'm not in it anymore? What do I want the world to look like when I'm not in it anymore?" Pretty powerful question. Enjoy the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Mortality and Tea with Amy. Hi, Nate. How are you?
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Mortality and Tea. How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a little warm out, but the air conditioning is working for now. And yeah, it's a nice summer day here on COVID-19 lockdown.
Nice summer day, COVID-19 lockdown.
I
Yeah.
I don't like going outside during this type of weather much anyway, so it's not
Yeah.
a huge problem.
Well, as we're getting started, do you have your cup of tea or beverage of choice?
I have my caffeinated beverage, absolutely.
Here, cheers.
Sláinte.
What do you have on there?
Oh, that's all the valence shells of a uranium-238 atom. Or I'm sorry, uranium-235.
There it is.
Uranium-238 is depleted uranium. Uranium-235 is the fissile isotope. So that's the one that actually makes nuclear power work.
Okay.
I saw these on one of the Facebook groups I was in. They were selling them. Had to get it.
Yes. Yes. So is
Color
your
change too.
knowledge
It's normally just a black mug.
So is that like your knowledge, does that derive from your time of being on the submarines, or is that just
Absolutely.
something of interest? Okay.
Yep. That was a reactor operator thing. U-235, splitting uranium-235 atoms is what made the boat go. So it was my wheelhouse.
That's it. Can that feel intense?
It's more boring than intense, honestly.
Okay.
The
Okay.
scary part, there's moments certainly where you're a little worried about what you're maybe messing up on the reactor, but you've got a lot of backup when it comes to that thing. There's never one guy making all the decisions. Everybody tries to back each other up, and everybody knows each other's job pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So you, you mess up. That's part of the process, but they try and minimize that pretty well. There's really good under instruction training programs in place.
Okay.
So, yeah, they try not to let you mess up too bad.
Yeah.
But that big screw up is always there if you decide to not follow the procedure.
Oh, okay.
The potential for that is always there. But there's also a lot of safety measures built into the reactor itself. It'll protect itself in a lot of cases. So you have to really do something pretty stupid to cause huge problems. The submarine was more dangerous than the reactor, for certain.
Okay.
That environment underwater is very similar to space in that the environment itself is trying to kill you actively.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is intense.
Yeah. And again, it becomes routine like anything dangerous. If you do it enough, you forget that it's dangerous and you get bored. And
yeah.
It's really been funny here on lockdown. It's kind of like being underway. Hours can crawl. Days, you think some days are never going to end. And then you blink your eyes and it's 3 months later.
Yes.
That's how a deployment works. It's just,
Okay.
yeah, hours drag and months fly.
Now, you spent 6 years in the military.
I did. Yep, 6 years in the Navy.
In the Navy.
2 years in school, and then 4 years assigned to a submarine, the USS Providence.
Wow. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, let's dive right into this conversation. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. So tell me, Nate, what is your first memory or first experience that you have of death?
So the first thing I remember as far as actually, and I'm not going to count like pets, like goldfish. That's understanding death. But my first experience with death was when my mother's best friend. This was really one of her inner circle people. She had cancer, and she was in and out of the hospital for a while. And she, when she passed, I remember very distinctly the exact words that my mother said to me. They were very out of character for her. She called me Tiger, which was not my nickname that she used for me. And she kind of broke down right there in front of me, and I realized, oh, this is a really serious thing. This is big. And I'm guessing I was maybe 7 or 8 years old at the time. But I still remember that fairly vividly. I know exactly in my childhood house exactly where it was. Yeah, like to see mom come apart like that was definitely left an impression.
Right.
And interestingly enough, she passed away in that room.
Really?
Yeah, I just realized that. That's the room that she passed away in. We had converted it. Well, Dad converted it. I didn't really do much in that. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, but Dad had converted that to a space for her hospital bed and her chamber pot, basically.
Right. Because
yeah,
your mother passed away from MS, correct?
yeah, she had multiple sclerosis for about 20 years.
Okay.
She was diagnosed my freshman year of high school, and she'd been having problems before that. They really tried to keep it from my brother and I. they knew something was wrong. She was going in for a bunch of MRIs and CAT scans and whatnot. And you figure in the late 80s, early 90s, that's pretty, I'm not going to say primitive, but it was a lot less high tech than what we have today.
Okay.
Um, they would do one of these tests and then it would take days and days and days and sometimes weeks for the results to come back. But from what I remember, I could be wrong here. It just seemed like there were so many problems. And then, Mom was a nurse, so she knew what the score was. And her sister was a nurse as well. And they talked about all sorts of problems that it could be. And I remember my aunt being over and just the two of them just holding each other and crying because they couldn't figure it out. And one day, my aunt said, I wonder if it's MS. And they both said, "Oh no, that's just way too terrible to imagine." And there was they got a second opinion at one point from a neurological physician. I don't know all the terms,
Sure.
but yeah, he he diagnosed it. Yeah.
Wow. Now, when your mom died, did that trigger any thoughts about your own death experience when she passed away?
Well, I don't think you can lose somebody near you and not ask some questions of yourself.
Mhm.
Um, Before Mom passed, Mom's been gone about 10 years now. So, I was like 34 years old. Um, it, I had I had dealt with a lot of loss at that point, and a 20-year diagnosis and MS even today it's still basically a sentence.
Mhm.
So 20 years to prepare for that. Um, it didn't make dealing with the emotions any easier, but it
Mhm.
definitely made my understanding of what had happened pretty clear. This wasn't a freak accident. This was 20 years of degradation. She spent her last 5 years in a hospital bed in the
Mhm.
house. And I take my wife and kids over, and they give grandma hugs. So
Mhm.
it was. She kept her spirits up until right till the end too. Pastor, well, I shouldn't say that name. We don't, the pastor that did his that did the service for us.
Mhm.
He actually started with the words that Mom would always say when people walked into the house, because it got to the point where the help, everybody knew everybody, and the
Mhm.
help would just come on in. And he started that service with "Hello, hello," because that was the first thing you'd hear when she heard the door. She would call out, "Hello, hello." So yeah, it was. I've kind of sidestepped your question here, but yeah, uh, it was definitely it definitely brought questions to my mind about my own mortality, but
Mhm.
uh, nothing I hadn't asked myself before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ask did you ask these questions of yourself as the 6 to 7-year-old when your mom's best friend died? Was
Oh,
it
of course not.
No, okay.
No, no. I don't think that's even on the radar for somebody at that age.
Right.
Uh, at 7 or 8, you're still immortal. And it only gets worse until you're about 25, 26.
Yes.
You're
Okay.
never going to die. Yeah. I mean, I even on the submarine, you ask yourself those questions, you think about that type of thing, what happens. And you still, as a 21-year-old kid, you don't really imagine that it could ever
Mhm.
happen.
Mhm.
You do have to kind of face the reality of it in that environment, but uh,
Mhm.
yeah, you don't ask those questions until, well, for me, I can't say everybody, but for me, I asked those questions more after I got out, and I was able to look back on that
Mm-hmm.
and really analyze that experience, that's when I started asking myself, well, what do I want the world to look like when I'm not in it anymore?
Mm.
So what do I do now while I've got this time?
Oh, I like
And
that.
how do I make it better? I think that's the thing that drives a lot of people is the desire to create that legacy.
Mm. But
It's
do we
one,
create our own legacy, Nate?
well, we have to. Um,
Consciously or
Circumstances,
subconsciously?
both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Circumstances dictate whether or not we're effective. Just
Mm-hmm.
because you want to leave a legacy doesn't mean you do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people who have no intention of leaving a legacy leave some of the most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm sure Mother Teresa never actively sought acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She was just trying to make the world around her a little better, and in the process helped millions and millions of people, and is still, considered this trailblazer, this pioneer, and she wasn't out there trying to leave a mark. She was just trying to do a little
Right.
good in the world. And
Right.
then there's other people who, they work their butts off their whole life trying to get famous, trying to make a ton of money, and trying to leave their mark. And the thing they're trying to leave the mark on just keeps dodging them at every turn, and they end up, without fanfare.
Mm.
So yeah,
Serving the ego, I suppose.
yeah, absolutely.
What does your ideal experience look like, Nate?
My ideal dev experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I don't have a preference.
Okay.
it's uh, it's one of those things that I've always found to be a little counterproductive to dwell on.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't give a lot of thought to it. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I have no control over it unless I do something like take my own life, which I'm not going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely out of my hands, top to bottom. Um, I I would like it to be peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to get a chance to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's one of those things that thinking about this question is why I say I love you to people I love all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know. You never know when that could happen. I try to always express what I feel in that moment. And if you remember to tell people what you think, then there will never, well, I can't say never, but you reduce the chances that there's doubt in their minds about how you felt after you're gone.
Mm.
So express it. Tell people what you think and how you feel, and you know, have conversations about what what they think the world might look like after you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, in your own death experience, you would really value being able to say goodbye and having peace.
I
And
kind of
so,
missed the question again, didn't I?
no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, uh, yeah. For me, that would be that would be preferred. Would be to have a chance to say goodbye. And depending on how much time you get,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Again, it's not something that I put a lot of thought into on a day-to-day basis. It's and I think if you've moved through your life and are happy with where you're at and you don't have a lot of regrets, I don't think it's something that should trouble you.
I just wrote down a quote before we got started by Mark Twain, which I absolutely love Mark Twain. He
Yeah.
said, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. It kind of.
Well, Sam's a little better with the pen than I am, but yeah, I think he and I are on the same page on that.
I'll end up looking up a quote before I get started on some of these conversations, and then serendipitously, it just for some reason. Well, I was thinking about you when I was thinking about a quote, and I was looking through. I just Google death quotes. Huh. It seems like something Nate would say. Okay, and sure enough, it really does. It fits. It
Came
fits.
right out of my mouth.
Right. Right. So, thank you. Um, Back to our questions here.
All
So,
right.
so in your ideal death experience, you value you value it to be peaceful, to be able to say goodbye. And now you've taken your final breath and your body has actively died. At that moment, before your body is taken off, taken away for whatever preparations for funerals, is there anything that you would want done with your body in those moments before that happens?
Well, I think that is an appropriate time uh, for the family to get to say goodbye. Is in that
Mhm,
moment. If they haven't gotten to say goodbye before then, um,
mhm.
you know, but uh, no, not
Okay.
really. It's a shell.
Mhm,
It's biomass, and
mhm,
that's all it is. Uh, my actual wishes for my disposal are not a big funeral and burial, and I certainly don't want to be involved. Um, Cremation and then scattering. So uh, I would say what I want in that moment is whatever is most convenient for the people who are going to have to deal with the dead body. That's what I want.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's irrelevant for me.
Mhm,
It's more about the comfort of the people who've been left behind.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah,
Okay.
again, not real fascinating answer here, but
It
yeah,
all
I don't
belongs.
have.
All of these
Yeah,
answers belong. It's great. It's great. I appreciate anything you have to offer.
oh,
Yeah.
my pleasure.
What do you mean by biomass?
Well, that's all. We are biomass. How did my friend put it? He said, "You are a, a ghost piloting a meat-covered skeleton made of stardust."
I love that.
Yeah,
Meat.
meat-covered skeleton made of stardust, and that's what we are. Um,
Mm,
you know, the body is not who we are.
mhm,
The mind is who we are, and whether you believe in a soul or a spirit or ghosts or whatever you believe
mhm,
in, um, we ourselves, you can lose an arm and you're still the same person.
mhm,
um, if if Futurama were true and they could keep heads alive in jars, we'd still be there because
mhm.
we are the consciousness that's inside this you know this vessel.
This
So
biomass.
this biomass,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So once I'm done with it, the biomass can get back to wherever it came from,
Mhm.
ashes to ashes.
Sure. What do you believe happens after you die? What happens with your consciousness?
I have been through so many discussions and hours and hours spent researching and thinking, and
Mhm.
I'm no closer to the truth than I was when I started. And that's the amazing thing.
Mhm.
uh, I have no clue, none, zero idea. uh, there are lots of ways to upset people by talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not gonna lambast anybody's belief, because the truth is no one knows. Um, it is so literally impossible to have any real idea about what happens after you die, that I love talking about it, but I have chosen not to decide what I think is right, because it's irrelevant. I like to hear what other people have to say about it. I like to hear what they think the answer is. And the beauty of it is as long as you're not real uptight about it, at the end of the conversation, you get to go, yeah, that might be the truth.
Mm.
And that's it. It might be. You don't know. I mean, there are none of us that can say without a doubt what happened. The latest one that I think I find the most interesting that I've read about is I've forgotten the name of the drug. Um, there's a chemical that your pituitary gland releases
Mm-hmm.
upon death. It has the effect of slowing your perception of time. And apparently, people who have ingested this chemical describe it as like a after death experience. But
Okay.
to ingest the chemical takes minute amounts to achieve an effect. Um, the the pituitary gland upon death apparently, and again, I didn't do any of this research. This is just what I read, but
Sure.
apparently releases a flood of this stuff.
Okay.
So some people have speculated that that chemical flood is what gives people the perception of eternity.
Mm.
Again, I have no personal experience with any of this. I have no idea if any of this is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just something I read, and you can find something that'll agree with you on the internet, no matter what you think. That's also a possibility.
It's another topic I'd really love to have on this show. I would really love to get a doctor on here with me to talk about the active process that our body goes through with dying. Like the body, as you talk about biomass, the body knows it is programmed to die. It knows how to do it. It knows the process to go through. It knows what to do first, and it's really quite fascinating. Um, to think about it, for me, it is to think about the body, the brain, the nervous system. It all sends out all of the information that it needs to do for the body to die in a process. It's really so. I'd love to talk to a doctor about that. Tell me about this chemical in the pituitary gland.
There you go. Yeah, I can't wait for that episode.
Yeah, me too. I gotta find somebody. I gotta find the right person. But if
Put the
anybody's
call out.
out there,
Yeah,
any doctors out there, come be on the show. Come talk about the death of the body. Oh, um, so I'll come back to this. So for you, the belief in what happens after you die is really just a great mystery, I suppose.
it is. It's the great mystery.
Right.
It's the one most common human experience. It's
Hmm.
something every human does.
Hmm.
All of us.
Yes.
It, it,
Yes.
it ignores every difference between us.
Hmm.
It happens to literally every single one of us. And
Hmm.
that's how all of our stories end.
Hmm. Yes.
All of them.
Yes. Which to me, um, that's why I like to just bring it to the conversation and not hide it away and slip it up underneath a rug and forget that it's there. It's the way we can live a little bit better. Looking at it, bringing it up to the conversation. It's not morbid. It's real. It's true.
Absolutely.
um. So Nate, do you have any regrets for anything you have not done? If you were to die today, would you be like, man, I really wish I would have done this,
That
or
I haven't done?
that you haven't done?
Hmm. not really.
Okay.
Um, I mean, there are, everybody says, "Oh, I want to climb Everest." Yeah, no interest in climbing Everest. Um, I'm not a daredevil. It's not who I am.
Sure.
I'm pragmatic for the most part. I'm offensive, which I kind of enjoy, and I, I I don't have I don't have regrets. I haven't lived with envy. I haven't lived with uh, tentativeness. I
Okay.
have not been timid in living my life, and I've done the things I want to do. I'm very content,
Mm-hmm.
not content to the point of inaction,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, the things that I want to do are optional. They don't have to happen for me to be happy.
Okay.
And yeah, in that moment, yeah, I assume my only regrets will be, gosh, wish I'd looked both ways, stuff like that.
um,
And that's going to be the regret, the same regret that I have when I slip with a tool and put a drill bit into my finger. There's the regret that I'll have in that moment. Is,
yeah.
well, wish I hadn't done that.
oh, and going along those lines is that you really do. You said earlier in the interview, you really tell people, "I love you."
I
You
do.
you really try to live in that moment, in that space of let's not waste any time here.
Yeah,
Just say how you feel.
it's not always understood
Right.
by by people that I love.
Mm.
I've been asked by people not to say it so much, and that kind of baffles me a little. And it hurts, uh,
Mm.
but it's not the worst thing.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing you
But
could say
yeah,
because you said or you come off offensive sometimes.
well, I don't come off offensive when I'm saying I love you.
Right, right. It's like it could be worse.
Yeah,
No. Okay, sure.
yeah.
Do you have I think I know the answer to this question already, but do you have any regrets?
Um, for the most part, no.
Okay.
Are there things that, given a certain circumstance, I would do differently based on who I am today? Because we're not the same person we were a week ago.
No.
We're always changing. We're always evolving. That's the beauty of being human, is that we have this this wonderful ability to learn from our mistakes and change things.
Mhm.
Yes, there are definitely things that I know I did the wrong way.
Okay.
There are things that I've said to people that I wish I could take back. There are the you know there are physical decisions that I made that were the wrong decision. Um, I've done things wrong. I'm
Mhm.
human. We're all human.
Mhm.
We all make mistakes. We all screw things up.
Mm.
What I try not to do is dwell on those mistakes beyond understanding what I did and making sure that I don't do it again. So
Mhm.
in that regard, I don't have things that I regret, that I hurt myself over.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
forgive myself for what I've done wrong. Now, we're not talking about big crap here. I'm not talking about, like, I beat somebody up. It's not that. I have always made good decisions regarding physical violence, regarding emotional violence. I don't do that to people. But
Mhm.
it's if you do something like that, you have to make amends with that person.
Mhm.
But small decisions that I dislike what I've done, I forgive myself for it. I move forward. And if it is something that warrants apologizing to another person, you have to do that. You have to get their forgiveness first and then forgive yourself. And you can keep on going.
Mhm.
But it's always forward. That's the trick.
Always forward.
you have to always be moving forward. And if you stop, if you decide to dwell on something that you messed up in the past, then you get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't keep moving. And,
So you live in a growth mindset.
I try to. I mean, again, I'm human, so I don't always pull it off.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where I try to be. That's the headspace I try to be in,
Mm-hmm.
especially these days, because it's a lot easier now. A lot of my biggest mistakes, I hope, are behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
yeah,
The human experience really is um that's something about this show that I hope comes across too, um, is that this human experience is so vast and so different and so amazingly beautiful from each perspective. And humanity is it's such a story.
we are crazy broken.
We have some growth to do. We really
Oh
do.
yeah,
Mhm,
yeah. Society is such a bizarre thing. It's
mhm,
not really something that I don't know if any other animals even attempt anything like this.
mm-mm.
Um, a beaver colony. I don't even know.
We don't know.
Not a biologist. Uh,
Right.
yeah, it's so it's so odd, and we've been doing it for, well, depends on which scholar you ask, I guess,
Sure.
but thousands at least of years, and
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're better or worse at it now than we were when we started.
I don't know. It's great to look back on it. History does become, for me, it becomes more interesting as I get older. That some ways do, and coming back to the conversation of death, that some ways of how we've progressed as humans, some ways just have to die
Hmm.
so that we can grow and bring about something new. Um, I don't know if we'll ever get to a spot where it's peaceful.
Yeah, neither do I.
um, but it's really fascinating to watch. It's really fascinating to look back and read about it, and you know, things die away for new things to come forward.
Yeah,
Death is necessary.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it's such a narrow slice of time that we get to look at.
Mm,
We
hmm.
can read about what happened, but it's not the same. The
Mm-mm.
the humans from previous time periods are, yes, they're the same, and no, they're not the same.
Mm-mm.
It's that we're all a product of our environment,
Hmm.
and it's yeah, it's impossible to really understand what happened when you read it in a history book.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know if that narrow slice of time that we all have to deal with inhibits the growth, or maybe it helps it by making sure that, like, large sections of the population that have a specific way of thinking, it can die out because that section of the population dies out.
Hmm.
So, we're looking right now. The generations themselves are this really. There's a lot of research that's proven that there's no such thing as a generation because humans are constantly breeding.
Hmm.
So there's they like to classify. That's one thing that scientists love to do is classify things. So they
Hmm.
classify generation. But the baby
Hmm.
boomer generation right now is reaching the age where they're starting to die at a more accelerated rate.
Hmm.
So what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of again, this is more my opinion than any scientific fact. I am not a researcher. I've read some articles. That's about it. But
Okay.
as I understand it, um, the the baby boomer generation, their ideas will start to dissipate,
Hmm.
and what we'll have is the product of their ideas that have been passed on to the future generations. And
Mhm.
so the, they'll take that information. We will take that information. Our kids will take that information and we'll filter it through our own experiences.
Mm.
So that's how it changes. And, you know, a 100-year-old human is a really old human.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, you know, it's, it's pretty quick the way that turns over when you really think about it.
Yes. Yes, it is.
60 or 70, that's, you know, that's an old human.
Mhm. It is. It it is, and we really are here for just a blink of an eye, really.
Yeah, our experience is so limited
Mhm.
that being able to, it's amazing that any of us get done anything of note in that
Mm.
amount of time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes.
Yeah,
What a great conversation. I wanna thank Nate for taking the time to have this vulnerable conversation with me. I'd like to thank his wife, Kate, and his son for sharing him with me, uh, while we have these conversations. And I wanna thank you, the people who view and support and share and like and comment on these conversations. Um, I'm honored to do this work. It's something that has presented itself to me in this life, and I learn so much from each and every conversation that I have. The value of each person's perspective in this world as human. It's really a human experience, and this job that I've created in having this show is it's about exploring humanity, our own humanity. And part of our own humanity is our own death. And if anybody is ever interested in coming on the show and having this conversation with me, please contact me. You can leave a comment, you can find my email, or find me on Facebook. I'm on Mortality and Tea on Facebook. I'd be honored to have anyone. Like I said, this is a show about trying to create a more rich and juicy life for each and every person. And part of that is really exploring our own humanity, and part of our humanity is our death. So, again, a very loving thank you to Nate. I love you, Nate. And I love you, Kate and Charles. Thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye. Mortality and Tea with Amy.